Today, you're going to meet successful businessman Stephen Crow. Stephen's looking to wind down in retirement in the next few years. Let's look at how Stephen and his advisor David Ray look to plan for his financial future. Welcome to the process of education around learning about investing. You're going to discover a lot of things on this journey, your own investment philosophy, your economic fingerprint, and you're going to meet some of the biggest and most successful fund managers in Australia. How are you feeling about that, Stephen?
Bit nervous.
Well, plenty to be excited and a bit nervous about. Dave, how do you think he'll go? Stephen's obviously, quite an experienced investor, and you two have been working together a while. What do you expect to see?
Oh, look, he is, but I think we're going to uncover in a lot more depth part of his philosophy, how that links with his goals and objectives, and really delve deeply into how the funds work, which we don't always do.
Well, Stephen, you're a long way towards achieving, what you want out of life. I know you and Dave are going to talk about that now, so good luck on this process.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to being part of it. Steve, let's talk about your investment goals.
The goals for my investments are really to look after me and my family when I stop working as actively as I am at the moment. And the things I'd like to be able to do are do a bit more travel, help look after my parents who are getting older, and stay involved in my children's lives a bit, so help them kick off with some property or maybe starting their own businesses.
Yeah, I think you're sort of stuck in that sandwich generation, aren't you, where you've got a bit of care for your parents, but your children are also at that age where you'd like to give them that bit of assistance as well.
Yeah, we've got obligations at both ends of the spectrum at the moment, and we'd like to be able to honour those.
We've spoken quite a bit about coming into 5 years or so where you may make the choice of whether you still need to keep working or not. What are the sort of things that you're most concerned or worried about in the lead up to that?
At the moment, while I'm working, I've still got some influence over income. But down the track, as I'm not working, my control over that and the influence I have over it personally wanes. So I have to have a whole lot more trust in the investments that I make now to perform in the future.
So I think we're really looking at a strategy that's going to give you a bit more certainty, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. So we need to try and find something that gives a reasonable return at a risk that we're going to be comfortable with in 10 years.
That's great, Steve. Let's keep these investment goals in mind as we take a look at the 3 fund managers that we're going to hear from.
To help Stephen take the next steps in his investment journey, we're bringing in our expert, Bernard Del Rey. Bernard leads a team of scientists along with the chair of the University of California, Berkeley's Economics Department, which Bloomberg has called the top economics department in the world. The team has created a game to help Stephen understand the way he makes decisions around money. We've had Stephen play the game, and now it's time for the big reveal. Let's see what Bernard thinks about Stephen's results. Bernard, let's talk about this concept of an economic fingerprint. You're about to go in there and tell Stephen what the results he got from playing the game are, but what's it all about? Why did you and this team of scientists come up with this concept, this game?
The simple reason we came up with this game is that people have a very difficult time stating their preferences in their areas of their financial life. Very difficult for someone to basically state how they make risk-reward trade-offs and what's comfortable for them. But through the game, what we do is we ask people to make decisions with the money that's at stake up against their goal. And from those decisions, we can understand their preferences even better than they can themselves. And that's what we're going to explore with Stephen in a second.
Okay, so Stephen's told you his goals. He wants to travel the world in retirement. So, you're going to be able to see from his economic fingerprint what decisions he's likely to make to get there?
Yes, we'll be able to understand his risk preferences, his tolerance for loss, and his tolerance for uncertainty on that journey to reaching his goals.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing how he reacts to what you tell him. Good luck.
So the first thing we're going to do is basically look at your economic fingerprint and the scores it produced. The first thing to note is that the decision-making quality was excellent, and that basically tells us the results that we got are very reliable. So, Stephen, I know we heard from David, you're quite a sometimes can talk up your risk tolerance quite a bit. But here within the game, we basically saw that your tolerance for risk is actually low to moderate, which I think we need to think about.
It's often hard for clients to understand exactly where their thinking is around how much risk they should be taking.
You're going to have an opportunity to compare that with the investment philosophies of many of the leading managers in the world. And what you want to be looking for here is not only the risk tolerance that they may be projecting to you in their philosophy, but also your tolerance for loss. Because what we see here is that, losses, you're actually fairly tolerant for losses within the portfolio. And I think it's something you understand, and it's something you're willing to expose yourself to, given your profile. So, Stephen, if we look at your tolerance for uncertainty, you'll see here that your tolerance for uncertainty is a bit lower, and it pretty much matches your overall risk tolerance as well. On paper is basically your philosophy, so good luck in comparing that to the managers that you see in the coming days.
With Stephen's economic fingerprint, his investment philosophy down on paper, our scientists have identified his personality type. They've called Stephen the conservative. He sits tight to protect his money, accepting lower payoffs and taking risks only when there's a lot to gain. Now that Stephen knows his investment philosophy, he's ready to take a look at 3 fund managers and see how their investment philosophies compare with his own.
We're now going to take a look at 3 different fund managers. The first one we're going to take a look at is Kerr Nielsen from Platinum Asset Management. He's the CEO and founder of the business. Let's take a look at what Kerr's got to say about their investment philosophy.
Companies are a living organism. When you look at the numbers they produce, that is the consequence of the efforts of this team of people who are on an adventure to create something worthwhile. I always thought that the essence of the system was in companies. I always thought it was about the individual's effort to build something. I always saw the prospect of companies doing sensible things that really created wealth. Why I like creating this garden, for example, is it's building something. It's going to be around for a long time if I'm lucky enough to be able to have people who appreciate it after me. And what are small trees today will be huge and give pleasure to a lot of individuals, to nature, to birds, to everything. You do need a global perspective, whether you're investing in a single market or not. The idea that we do not diversify is just crazy, because it is presuming all the benefits, all the luck this country has had is a sort of perpetual gift. And I don't think that's a good assumption. It may be true, but it's not a wise assumption as someone who is trying to protect and increase their wealth. After I graduated, I went and worked in London. And so I've always looked at global stocks. And when I came here, that's where we really built a reputation for understanding the differences. And there were great opportunities in the early days because in some of the markets they were very undeveloped. And so there was a real arbitrage of information. Markets are free competition. The information edge is an illusion because with the internet everyone can gain access to information. The trick, in our view, is about interpretation of information. So it's the working through and emphasizing the right things that matter, and that's what gives you an edge. It's how you play with the information you're given. Being successful at that is satisfying. You have to be contemporary in your thinking, and that's always difficult. The tragedy is, with super, most people feel they're saving enough. But of course, we'll find that the amount they put in super is inadequate. So certainly for younger people, we really want to get them into the idea of being aware of the market. It's not just a casino. There's very good reason why stocks go up over time. If you create wealth, you will have an outcome that is positive to you. And so that's the essence of the system, and that's what we're trying to convey to people. Because, we're all fairly busy, and most of us have, bigger eyes than our pockets, and so we want to spend and we want to have it all now. But I've always believed that there's always space for putting some aside to really have the surpluses that really give you choices later on, give you substantial choices.
So one of the areas we've talked about, Steve, is mitigating your risk or being cautious around where you're headed over the next few years, and I think Platinum offers diversification through international share exposure. One of the interesting aspects of Platinum's approach is their global investing, and I think that makes an important part of your overall investment approach.
Yeah.
What did you think of their global investment approach?
They're choosing from a lot bigger pool of organisations, which for me reduces risk. But it'd be also interesting to know when they're talking about global investment, are they talking about companies that operate globally and so operate over numbers of geographies and number of markets, or just companies that may operate locally but are outside the Australian market, because that's quite different.
Yeah, look, that's a great question. We're now going to take a look at the second fund, Steve. We're going to hear from Alex Vineker, Managing Director of Beta Shares. Let's hear what Alex has got to say about their investment philosophy.
One of the things that life had taught me, sort of over the years, is that accepting status quo is not necessarily the right way to go about things. It's important to listen to feedback, but it's also important to synthesize that feedback and draw your own conclusions and really sort of ultimately go with your instinct and go with what feels like the right thing to do. Before starting Beta Shares, I've spent quite a considerable amount of time working in traditional funds management. We saw quite a strong opportunity to really do things differently and do things in a way which provides investors with a bit of choice. What we're about is delivering intelligent investment solutions in a cost-effective way, but also in a way which is readily accessible. So removing some of the barriers which sit between an investor and that goal that they're ultimately setting out to achieve. Exchange-traded funds are transparent by their nature. They disclose their holdings on a daily basis. You have the confidence of being able to log in and check on a daily basis what the underlying holdings are in that fund. So ultimately, the objective of an exchange-traded fund is to deliver a return to an investor with no surprises as to how that investment is actually going to be carried out. We're an Australian born and bred business. We have specifically founded the company and have been building the company over the years to serve the needs of Australian investors. So what's in our DNA is innovation with a purpose of making investment experience a better one for Australian investors. Australia is a pretty amazing country. It's a society which provides you with immense opportunity. The real question is about sort of whether you want to go about that or pursuing that opportunity or not. So for those people who are willing and have the appetite and have the interest, Australia's got so much to offer. I'm on the one hand involved in investing, and on the other hand quite passionate about cooking. I do think there's a lot of similarities because investing is not something that people do or can do well with one ingredient. It's very difficult to build a tasty dish or to cook a tasty dish with one ingredient. And assembling an investment portfolio is really in many ways similar to assembling a great dish. When you've got some salt sitting on the table, it's just salt. There's nothing more to it. But when you start mixing it with some vegetables and some olive oil and some other ingredients, you can really create something with a very different taste profile. The quality of ingredients are important, but there are some ingredients which are fantastic in a dish where you don't have to spend sort of excessive amounts of money. And in investing, with our ETF business, our objective is really to deliver investment tools to people where they don't have to overpay. You can deliver very good investment outcomes with cost-effective investing. Some of the tastiest and most inspiring dishes that I've tried, both in my modest kitchen and some fine restaurants, were really made with very simple ingredients. And I think ETFs are the simple ingredients of investing that people are starting to embrace more and more.
So the investment philosophy of Beta Shares is a little different to what we've seen with the other managers. They do take a more an index type approach, and it does provide a really good way to get a low-cost exposure to a particular sector or a particular country. And I think it can complement really well with an active approach where they're going out and visiting companies. What did you think about the approach that Alex and BetaShares take?
If, as I've learned today, I have lower risk preferences than I thought, that works quite well for me. And the goal is to match the market in lots of cases. And if we can do that by following that particular market, and again with low fees on the end of it, that it does make it quite attractive for some parts of the portfolio.
What questions do you have?
I'd like to, I suppose, understand a bit better the individual funds. Of course, there's a wide range of funds there, and as you said, a different range of asset classes to invest in. Potentially some of the beta funds might be an alternative in there for me that offer a bit better return than cash with not a whole lot more risk. And so I'd like to find out a bit more about those.
The third fund manager we're going to hear from is Tribeca. Let's take a look at what Sean Fenton's got to say about their investment philosophy.
The human brain's a constantly evolving thing. What's been shown is by being more open-minded, open to change, and just practicing new things, you can certainly change the way your brain thinks and operates. And as an investor, that's something you need to do. Investing is certainly a very complex thing to do in the sense it's predicting the future. Our investment philosophy is reasonably unique, and it does involve two different approaches to investing. So we've got the quantitative side and the fundamental side. Part of that approach is scientific, where you've really got to do the basic groundwork, do your research in terms of the companies, understand how they operate, where their earnings come from, and where they're going to. That's really the science behind investing. But that's really just the starting point. To really outperform the market and do well requires a little bit of art. That, to an extent, comes down to experience and being a very sort of open and critical thinker in terms of analysing your own reactions to information, looking at where you've performed well, what's worked well, what's not worked well, performed poorly. And through time, by doing that, you can essentially retrain your brain to make good decisions, and that's where the art comes into it. Having productive discussions, going out, talking to people is a very important part of the art of investing. You can't do it all by yourself, and the wider you spread your point of view, the more points of view that you adopt into your own way of thinking, the wider you discuss issues, the better you're going to be at forecasting outcomes. So that's certainly an approach that we take and encourage within the organisation. In my personal life, I've found investing has really made me more willing to sort of grasp the moment, experience what there is on offer, look for new experiences. I quite like to travel, see the world, see different cultures, understand how things work around the world. When you're young, your ego's a bit stronger and you think you can get it all right and make the right decisions, but it's something that I think comes with experience and lessons learned. So I certainly have learnt lessons along the way and realised that you do need to be critical of yourself and your own decisions, not so critical that you don't have confidence to go out and make decisions, but you need to analyse yourself, the way you react to situations. It's very easy when you make an investment and it goes wrong to ignore it, and people do it all the time, and not look at why that went wrong and not adapt their behaviour and take lessons from it so you don't make that same mistake going forward. So that's what experience in investing is all about. It's about learning from your mistakes and learning what works well so that you can intuitively actually become a better investor through time. That's certainly a philosophy that's been building within my own career through time. I think we'll continue to build going forward.
So what did you think about the eclectic nature of the investment philosophy?
Well, I think it'll take a little bit for me to understand it fully. The mixture of investing in a company's fundamentals and then looking at the quantitative results of other investor biases and how they can take advantages of other investment mistakes that people make. So I'd like to find out a bit more about that and see how much of an effect that has on the returns in their investments.
We'll hear from the Guardians when they grill the fund managers about their philosophies, so we'll look forward to that next time.
The Guardians are the investment industry heavyweights who are responsible for ensuring only the highest quality investment products reach the public.
Our relationship with managers needs to be a working relationship.
I wouldn't say it's collaboration because we have to provide objective opinion and insight on those managers.
It's up to us to make sure that members can feel safe when they're investing with our company, to make sure that they've got the best access to the best possible investments.
Amanda Gillespie is the joint CEO of Lonsec Fiscal Holdings. David Wright is the director and joint founder of Zenith Investment Partners. Matt Heiner is the joint managing director of Netwealth Group. Now it's time for David, Stephen's advisor, to meet our Guardians and explain Stephen's unique investment goals and economic fingerprint. Well, welcome back, Guardians. I'd like to introduce you to Dave Ray, who's our advisor on the show today. He's brought along his client, Stephen Crow, who's been a successful businessman, but looking to wind down in the next few years, looking to retire.
Sure. Steve's thinking about retiring from work over the next 5 years or so. He's got a bit of a challenge at the moment in terms of starting to balance his lifestyle out though as well. So he's got ageing parents who are starting to need a little bit of care, but he's also got kids that are starting to think about getting into the property market or starting a business potentially, and he might be helping them out in those regards. But he also wants to start to enjoy himself a little bit as well, because he's worked hard over his working life. So start to do some of the travel that he's always wanted to do, Canada, Alaska, those kind of things, and have more time to do his passions and hobbies, such as rally car driving.
Bit of a varied mix of hobbies, but not so different an economic fingerprint, I guess, for the age group. So quite conservative?
Yeah, look, I think that's a bit of a flow-on from the GFC, really, for Stephen. Seeing people who had to make decisions around their lifestyle that were out of their control because of what was going on in share markets at the time. So he's very focused on what he can control and making sure that he's not going to be affected by those sorts of things.
Is there anything that we can explore today to give him more comfort around his investments?
Sure, I think for Stephen it's really about that understanding, and being a successful businessman over many years, he really takes the time to understand exactly what's going on in his business, and I think his investing is a little similar. So once he's got a really good understanding of how an investment works, the philosophy, the strategy behind it, I think that'll give him a little more comfort around that.
Well, it's interesting times ahead. Good luck, Guardians. If you're ready to take the next step in your financial future, head to our website, where you'll have the chance to play the game and see your very own economic fingerprint and personality type. You can take part in our learning centre and learn to think like an investor from our experts and some of the most experienced money managers from around the globe. You can also join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Next time on the investment series, Dave and Stephen get front row seats to watch our money managers being grilled by the Guardians.
We believe in being nimble, flexible and open to different styles of investing.
We travel immensely, searching the world for interesting investment ideas. And that's the key.
Delivering low-cost but intelligent investment solutions to Australian investors.
The managers will be pitching their investment philosophies and David and Stephen will be watching on.
What are the sort of risk management constraints you operate under?
Can we perhaps take it back to basics, and could you just explain how is it put together?
Does a fund like yours actually help smooth performance and protect that downside?
To see how Stephen can make his financial goals a reality.